for the expiration date, or perhaps the freshness date. Now that date is there to tell us that there are limits to the freshness, and in some cases, even the safety of various foods. You may not realize that God says similar things about his mercy. That just like the food in the grocery store has an expiration date, so does his mercy. Let me show you what I mean. In Philippians chapter 2, the Apostle Paul is talking about a friend, a co-worker, and his sickness, a man named Epaphroditus. Let me read it. I have thought it necessary to send to you Epaphroditus, my brother and fellow worker and fellow soldier, and your messenger and minister to my need. For he has been longing for you all and has been distressed because you heard that he was ill. Indeed, he was ill, near to death. But God had mercy on him, and not only on him, but on me also, lest I should have sorrow upon sorrow. So the Apostle Paul says that this co-worker, Epaphroditus, became sick, and he almost died. But he said, God had mercy upon Epaphroditus. What does he mean by that? Well, we know he spared his life, that Epaphroditus recovered, but why does Paul say that was a merciful act of God? Well, the Bible says that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So everyone who is alive today has sinned, meaning that they've broken God's law, that they've loved themselves instead of loving God, that they've done what they've wanted to, rather than concerning themselves what God is saying about how to live. So we've all sinned. And more than that, the Bible says the wages of sin is death. What that means is the result of sin is death. So if everyone has sinned and the result of sin is death, then it means that God is merciful and that he does not immediately strike us dead the moment we first sin. That's what Paul has in mind when he says that God was merciful to Epaphroditus and that he restored and sustained his life. Do you think of your life as an act that you can live your life because of the mercy of God? But it's true. And here's the interesting thing. This mercy that God offers has an expiration date. Because we know that Epaphroditus, as for all of us, we eventually die. And so this mercy that Paul says God extended to Epaphroditus is the same mercy he extends to us. But eventually it comes to an end and we experience the consequences, the results of our sin, which is death. Which raises the question, why is God merciful to us? He's merciful to us because he wants us to recognize our need for him. He wants us to recognize that, yes, we sin, and he wants us to recognize that we need to turn from our sin and turn to him. In fact, the Bible says that when anyone turns from their sin and turns to Christ and cries out, asks him to save them, he receives grace for all eternity. It's quite a trait. Instead of this mercy that will extend only as long as we live, God offers us a grace so that even after we die, we can spend eternity with him. You know, one of the things that's been happening with this coronavirus, of course, many millions of people are getting sick and some die. But for everyone, it gives us pause, doesn't it? And we realize that, like the food in the grocery store, we too have an expiration date. And of course, we don't know when that is, and we hope that it's many years from now. But here's the promise of God. We can know today if we're right with him. We don't have to live in this fear that when our time is over, we will have to stand before him and we're not ready. We can be ready today. Recognize that you're a sinner, that you've loved yourself rather than loving God, and turn toward him and ask him to save you. And then you'll receive a grace that extends for all eternity. So I encourage you to use this time with the coronavirus. We see things happening around us. For many people, they have more time than they've had in the past. Reflect honestly on where you're at so that you can be ready to meet him when his mercy expires.